Hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And I am here with yet another high demand coach. It is the one, the only Mark Bateman, who is the CEO of WeQual. He's a visionary disruptor, a corporate advisor, and an executive coach focusing on leadership development. And WeQual is a firm devoted to driving gender equality and unleashing purposeful leadership within the top echelons of the world's most influential companies. He partners with global leaders to spark impactful, enduring change and offers unique real-world insights and actionable strategies to foster authentic, influential leadership. By boldly questioning the status quo, he helps leaders to shape purposeful legacies and drive positive organizational transformations. He's also the author of a fantastic book called Disruptive Leadership, Using Fire to Drive Purposeful Change. He's here with us today. Well, Mark, welcome to the show. What an intro. I'm excited for this conversation. So much ground to cover, but I'd love to start off with, for you at WeQual, what would you say is some of the most important work that you do?
Gosh, well, welcome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I think I'm going to have to borrow that introduction and use it for myself. It's a real pleasure being here, Scott. In terms of WeQual, I think, we're driving equality with a very specific focus on women within the world's largest companies. And I think there's kind of sometimes some pushback or some questions around why that even needs to be a focus. Yet the truth is, there is a compelling business case to increase equality at the top of the world's largest companies. Why? Because it's better for business, revenues, profitability. It's better for people, employee engagement, customer service. And actually, it's also better for the planet in terms of focus on ESG and CSR. So all the aspects related to climate change, governance, all social types of issues, etc. So
fantastic. So I'd love to dive into this because it's a topic I think most of us are aware of, right? But I don't know most of us know how big an issue it still is. So how big is the gap today? And you've kind of dabbled into this, but maybe on a practical note, why is it so important?
So it's interesting. 95% of CEOs globally are men. 95%. That's a really, really, really high percentage. And what does that actually mean? Well, it means we really have one idea of what successful leadership looks like. And it's kind of defined by history. And I'm very aware that I'm saying this as a male CEO myself. Scott, you're a CEO. This is the field that we're in. What I've been absolutely amazed by over the last 4 years since I've been the CEO of WeQual is the number of incredible women that I have found at the top of big Fortune 1000 companies. And the difference that they bring every single day in terms of their leadership style, as well as their leadership impact. And so it really has, for me, redefined what true successful leadership looks like. Because if the only thing that we have is some kind of historic model, which is primarily men, with no idea really what then a female leadership style looks like. What does that actually look like? What does success look like? Or does that woman need to have more masculine traits? So I've learned so much working with these incredible women that really genuinely bring a greater empathy for people. Number one, they seem to care far more about the world as a whole rather than just about the numbers. And don't mistake that for not being exceptional on the numbers. These are, top presidents, top CEOs globally who are women who are driving the numbers, but they're doing so in a sustainable way that is actually better for the planet, better for every single human being on the planet.
And you mentioned this in your answer here, and it's a question that I have, but as a male CEO, what role do I have to play in closing that gap?
Every role, right? Those that are in power always have greater responsibility, always, right? It's incumbent upon the position of leadership. So within the book, which I know we're probably going to come on to, but at the let me just touch on the book, right? So within my book, I use the analogy of fire. Using fire as an analogy for leadership and/or for organizations. So how do we start a fire? It's much akin to starting a business. How do we grow a business, grow our fire? How do we maintain and protect it from our competitors whilst ensuring that we don't burn out ourselves? Now, in the third stage of growing a business, a fire needs three things: heat, fuel, oxygen. Heat is a leadership purpose in action. So it's the moment we want to set about making a difference, we start expending energy in pursuit of that difference, we start generating heat. Where they need fuel. Fuel is amazing people, as well as resources, things like cash, to grow our business. And finally, we need oxygen, which is our customers, our market, those that we seek to impact. Once we have a business up and running, it's like we have a fire. Now, what we have to do is make sure that that fire stays burning. Second law of thermodynamics, I'm going to take you back to your physics class at school here. The second law of thermodynamics states that within a closed system, entropy increases over time. What does that mean? Well, it means that there is a general slide towards chaos and disorder. You only have to look at very well-known examples like Blockbusters, or even Kodak, where they had strong positions in the marketplace, but they got so fixated on what they knew that actually what happened is they slid into a state of chaos and disorder and ended up filing for Chapter 11. I think Blockbusters has one store still open in the US. So how does a company, once it's operating, protect itself? How does it ensure it keeps its heat, its fuel, and its oxygen? Well, for that to happen, a company needs primarily two things. It needs external energy, and it needs time. It's known as the learning organization. It's a company that is able to continuously disrupt itself. Now, from that external energy piece, that's all about diversity. How do you know that your product is right, your service is right? How do you know that you're meeting your customers' needs? One of my favorite stories is, I believe it was P&G, but I could be wrong, so don't sue me. But there was a major manufacturer of nappies, and the whole marketing team was men. Think about that for a second, right? How could that be? So by bringing in diverse input, i.e. those that sound different to us, that think differently to us, and especially if we're in that senior leadership position of a CEO or other senior leadership positions, making sure that we don't have what I call sycophantic followers, right? Those who say yes, those who just wait to carry out our bidding. No, they challenge us. They bring fresh perspective. They generate heat because they think differently. Their experience is different, and it's painful, and it's difficult, and it can make decision making that little bit longer. But once you get to a decision point, you've gone through a better process.
Yeah. I think it was Adam Grant, I could be wrong on that, but said you want to hire folks for cultural contribution, not cultural fit. And I hear a lot of that in what you're saying. But that's intimidating, right? Because if we're hiring folks who are like us, we can kind of use the like us as a litmus test for whether or not they'll fit in. So how do we go about finding people who aren't like us, but are the right kind of not like us, if that makes sense?
I think this comes back to classic leadership stroke coaching, right? So focusing on vision, mission, and values. So we're really clear as a business as we're growing WeQual. So we're pretty much doubling every year at the moment. Well, we have a very, very clear vision. We have a very clear why, our purpose, our mission, and we have a very clear set of values. When we were first started hiring, we brought in our very first head of people who was also responsible for recruitment. You'll know if you come inside. I can't give too much information away because this is still live, but the shortlist that we get for candidates would all be very similar looking. I mean, number one, a lot of women want to come and work with us, which you can understand. But I say, no, we need to push that diversity internally. And it takes extra effort. It's harder. And then when you're interviewing somebody, it's harder because they're not the same, right? If you've all gone to the same college together, yeah, you can talk, you can share about whatever stories happened and whatever happened in that local area. But what does different look like? Where is the challenge? I was interviewing somebody who didn't fit our current ethnic and gender mold, if you like. And she says, no, you don't hire for culture fit. You hire for culture stretch. I really like that. Thank you, Cara Jessica, by the way, for that one. Culture stretch. So how are you stretching your thinking? What does that actually look like? Because if you just do more of the same, you're going to get more of the same.
Yeah, that's so true. I do want to shift gears back to the book because you used really an interesting metaphor in this idea of fire the whole way through. And as I was doing some research for the episode, I kept coming back to this idea that fire can build, it can propel, right? But it can also burn down and destroy.
Yeah.
How do we know whether we're harnessing it for the right things or whether we're ultimately acting against our own interests?
Yeah. So for me, it comes back to a very clear sense of purpose. Why are you doing this? And is it for ego, right? Is it for personal status, personal power? It's empowering me in some way, or is it actually going to leave a legacy that is judged through the lens of time, right? So that impactful legacy. And you're right, a fire, I use the example of different types of fire. If you have a wildfire that burns outside your house, that's never a good thing. If you have a flash fire in your kitchen, not a good thing. But if you have a spark inside a fuel engine, a gas engine, a petrol engine, that one spark, propels your car for another few feet, right? So depending on the context. So as leaders, being really, really clear about why we are building the fire that we're building. Is it just to burn indiscriminately? Is it to grow at all costs? Is it to meet some deeper internal need where we need to feel that the world thinks we're amazing, i.e. it's kind of all about our ego? Or is there something more purposeful than that? And staying true to purpose, I believe, is one of the biggest constraints on how your fire will burn, along with your values, right? The values, what I mean by that is, what are the behaviors that you as a leader and those in your company will follow, such that when you have to make a decision, hey, here's some quick money, we could make some quick money here, and gosh, right? Especially as entrepreneurs, we know we need money, but actually that money comes with a cost. It's impacting our ethics, our morals, our values in some way. No, we're not going to do that, because the moment you start going down that route, your fire starts burning out of control.
Well, you keep coming back to purpose and just that the depth of that honest assessment behind it. And the question I have for you, is that something you can do alone? Is that something? Do you need a team around you to do that? Do you need someone from the outside to come in, or is that something that you can really do consistently on your own?
In terms of what? In terms of making an impact, or
of assessing whether or not you're in alignment with that. Like,
oh gosh, okay. Well, so most people that find themselves leading something, especially of note, right? So those that we would call a leader, are typically driven by some kind of purpose. They may actually be unaware of what their purpose is. To ensure that we stay on the straight and narrow, to make sure that our fire doesn't burn out of control, I think that's where leaders, we have to hold ourselves accountable. So we absolutely have to surround ourselves, not only within our leadership team, but actually those outside the company as well, holding us account to our vision, our mission, and our values. Because it can be too easy, either intentionally or maybe subconsciously, get pulled off to the side by something that's not helpful, that will, at the end of the day, cause destruction or harm.
I work with a lot of folks in the entrepreneurial world. So a lot of my clients are founders, and they're going through this transition of, I am the company, right? Yeah. And in that case, there's not a whole lot to be held accountable to, right? Because you and it are the same thing. To, I have built a company and I'm willing to be held accountable to what we're doing together, right? It's a powerful transformation.
Right, but there's two parts to that, though, I think. There's the first part, which is accountable to the vision, the reason that you're doing what you're doing. And the second one is being accountable in the way that you do it. And actually, in a sense, I'm more focused on the way that you do it, because we can't tell anybody that what they're doing is right or wrong, but the way that they're doing is most likely not helpful. Much of coaching is about leadership development. Why? Because we want to be more effective in terms of driving the results that we want, because the results that we want drive us more towards our purpose and our vision, right? So I would actually argue, even if you're starting out, it could even be more essential that you have a degree of accountability, because accountability is two-way anyway. Right? But there's lots of decisions you're having to make. How do I spend my time? What do I prioritize? Gosh, I don't have a work-life balance anymore. I'm working 80, 100, 120-hour weeks. My relationship with my wife and my partner is falling on the rocks. Well, where does accountability come in that situation? At what point is the cost too great? So accountability, don't see it as a negative thing. I absolutely see it as a positive thing. Almost like, when you're learning to ride a bike and you have what do you call them? The trainer wheels, I don't know what you call them, on the two little wheels by the back wheel, stabilizers, right? It's almost like that. Accountability can just help keep you upright rather than veering off and hurting yourself badly or hurting somebody else badly.
That's awesome. All right, so Mark, there's a question I like to ask all my guests, and it is this: what is the biggest secret you wish just wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing you wish everybody watching? I think that so many of us are waiting for permission.
I think that we have this impression that the world is going to give us something. We're waiting for us to be ready. We're waiting for somebody to say, hey, yes, go and do this. We're always waiting for somebody to give us permission to do something. Stop waiting. Like, what would it look if you took up all of your space? If you allowed yourself to be fully who you are without fear of failure, without fear of somebody saying no, what would that look like? So giving yourself permission. I have a really simple exercise. I do this. Imagine you have a magic piece of paper with a magic pen. Whatever you write on that magic piece of paper with your magic pen is possible. And as you're writing down whatever it is you want to do, stop all of the critical thinking, self-limiting beliefs, the critical voice that's always there, the thing that tells you why you can't. remove all of that and write it, magic pen, magic piece of paper, exactly what you'd love to do, and then figure out how to do it. Just go and do it, because life is so short.
Yeah, so true and so good. Well, Mark, I know there's some folks listening to this, and they've got to have more, right? They want to know whether they can get a copy of your book or connect with you guys at WeQual. How can they do that? First, how can they get a copy of your book?
The book, thank you. It's available on Amazon and in all the major countries around the world. In case you want to look at it, it's right here. It's a Disruptive Leadership Using Fire to Drive Purposeful Change by me, Mark Bateman, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get hold of me at mark-bateman.com. And if you're interested in WeQual, so as a company, we're focused on driving equality within the world's largest companies. We typically work with blue chip companies. Right now, companies, unfortunately, probably maybe for most of the listeners here, over $1 billion in size, and really helping to unlock leadership regardless of gender and regardless of ethnicity.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for being on the show. It's just an honor and privilege having you here. And for those of you watching and listening today, you know your time and attention mean the world to us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.